Buckle your seatbelt. It's time for another episode of the Prepper Recon Podcast. If you're near Cincinnati, start making plans to come see me at the Cincy Preparedness Expo at the Sharonville Convention Center on October 15th and 16th. Besides all of the fantastic prepper gear available, it's a great place to learn vital survival skills. And make sure you stop by the Prepper Recon booth to say hi. Check out CincyPreparednessExpo.com for tickets and information. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PREPPERRECON for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com. Hey Preppers and Patriots, this is the second half of my interview with Dr. Bones from doomandbloom.net. Enjoy the show. On a little bit lighter note, you guys came up with a survival board game, didn't you?
Yeah, when we travel around the country, we find so many people that are the lone prepper in their group or in their family, and the rest of the gang really could care less about it, and you don't want to hear it. And so we figured out how could we get some of these folks that are just absolutely uninterested, how can we get them on board and get more into the survival mindset without it being a lecture, without cramming it down their throats. And so we figured, why not have a board game? We like to play board games ourselves. Why not have a board game that you can pull out on a family game night, have everybody put down their smartphones for a little while, and play a game in which you wind up making a bunch of survival decisions and just not have it be something that your family member that is a prepper is trying to badger you into becoming interested. It turns out that people will become interested, especially younger folks, become actually more interested in it and sort of think it's a fun thing to think about, but it actually might be useful for them one day in terms of decision-making, risks and rewards, things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's called Doom and Bloom Survival. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on our website at doomandbloom.net.
Oh, that's very, very cool. And unfortunately, an active shooter scenario is something that everybody has to be prepared for these days. What are the basics that a person should carry with them, or at least have in their car in case of a gunshot wound?
Well, I think that you should have some of the things that Nurse Amy has put together in her bleeding control kit. I have one right in front of me here. And what she put together is a kit that anybody should be able to use, even if you don't have any medical training. It's important. By the way, I would wish that we would instill a culture of medical preparedness in our young people. I think we should have a course in first aid as part of what every kid should learn at a certain point, maybe middle school or maybe a little earlier. So you got to have reading, writing, and arithmetic, but maybe you should have reduced hemorrhage too, because these are days where it's pretty clear there's a new normal and that there's always going to be the possibility of a terror event, active shooter, anywhere that crowds of people gather in schools. That's one place definitely that it could happen. So you'd want to have in your bleeding control kit. You can, of course, take a look at it on our website at store.doomandbloom.net. It's called the First Aid Bleeding Control Kit. But you'd want to have gloves. You'd want to have things like H&H dressings. H&H dressings are what we call compressed gauze. They look like little squares, but when you open up the package, they open up. They're 4 inches by 12 feet. They're pretty awesome to have. Roller gauze. You want to have a tourniquet. A lot of people like the soft T tourniquet or the cap tourniquet, especially if you're a former military, you're used to that. There's a SWAT T tourniquet, which is good for people that have absolutely no training, which is basically a big giant elastic band that you just put tighter and tighter around the extremity that might be bleeding, let's say 2 to 4 inches above the level of the bleed. That is called a SWAT T, and it's getting pretty popular. Definitely, at the very least, a backup tourniquet for your kid. You want to have some blood clotting agents, things like Celox. Celox is our preferred hemostatic agent or blood clotting gauze, and the reason why is because it will, unlike Quick Clot and some other ones, it will stop bleeding in people that are on blood thinners. And so it's also very versatile in that if you wet it it becomes this sort of slimy gel-like dressing that is a good covering for burns. So it's a versatile thing. It's called Celox, Celox, and you can take a look at it. One of the folks that follows us is one of the purchasing agents for the Navy in Hampton, Virginia, and he gets to do all sorts of experiments on these things. And he actually took this Celox, had a pig that was trussed up, shot the pig with a handgun in its femoral artery, and then used the Celox to stop the bleeding. Now, you could have done that with QuikClot too, but what they did in this case is they shot the pig's other leg, took the Celox dressing out of the first wound, put it in the second wound, it stopped the bleeding there, and the bleeding in the first wound didn't start up again. So it's a pretty good product. And, of course, these people are going to be in shock most likely. You need to have one of those Mylar blankets or any kind of blanket that will keep people warm. And by the way, a lot of these things that you'll find, Israeli dressings and a lot of the items that are used to stop bleeding are in packaging. And sometimes the packaging is easy to open, sometimes not so easy to open. So any kit for bleeding control should always have a pair of scissors, because your hands, if you've got gloves on, or even if you don't, if there's a lot of bleeding, your hands are going to get slippery. You need to have those scissors.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out Silver.com today. Trading Post in the Woods is ran by veteran crisis responders who know how important it is to be prepared. They specialize in comprehensive natural survival remedy kits, preparedness and homesteading supplies, as well as skills training. Visit them online today at tradingpostinthewoods.com.
Get prepared before disaster strikes. Preparecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, QuikClot, EMT shears, suture kit, steri-strips, tourniquet, tough strip bandages, and so much more. Kits are available in OD Green, Coyote, Black, and ACU. $99 includes shipping. Go to Preparecon.com and click the Store tab at the top of the home page. Order today before it's too late.
And I think that a lot of folks don't really think about what they're going to do if they're in an active shooter situation and they are injured either by a bullet or shrapnel from maybe an explosion from a terrorist attack. And I think that a lot of times folks just panic and they end up doing nothing. So if a person's shot or injured in a terrorist attack, what should their first course of action be?
If they are the person that's injured, or if they are a bystander?
If they're injured.
If they're injured themselves, try to apply pressure onto the wound. Because when law enforcement arrives, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to try to neutralize the threat. And so they'll actually bypass the wounded if they think that somebody is still making casualties. So if somebody's making more casualties, their priority is to neutralize the threat as opposed to taking care of the wounded. That's why some of these bleeding control kits, I think, are very important. I think you'll find one day that we'll probably have them next to the fire extinguishers on the wall. We already are working with people to try to begin that process, because I really think that we are at a point where this is something that's going to happen more and more as time goes on. So if you were the person that's injured, you have to try to apply pressure to your wound. A lot of times, if it's not an arterial bleed, you can stop the bleeding with pressure. It's great if you had some kind of barrier or handkerchief or some other, who carries a handkerchief really nowadays, anything that would allow you to allow you to have a barrier between your hands, which are dirty, and the wound itself. But the truth of the matter is, before we worry about your dying from infection, we have to worry about your dying from bleeding to death, and that can happen in just a few minutes. So you've got to act first. If you're a bystander at the scene, I would say to you that 1 in 5 of these deaths from bleeding in these situations is preventable by the quick action of a bystander. So if the shooter has left the area and you see somebody bleeding to death and you see the law enforcement folks run by to try to get to where the shooter is, then your actions will possibly save a life if you do it quickly.
Do you think that emergency facilities can be overwhelmed by an active shooter situation where they get just so many casualties coming in that they just don't have the staff or the facilities to handle it?
Absolutely. You just don't know how difficult it is for, let's say, a small town or any kind of municipality that's not in New York City or Chicago to put together 50 ambulances to go to, let's say, a nightclub like the Orlando Pulse nightclub and pick up 50 injured individuals. There were 49 dead, but there were 52 at least injured individuals that required medical attention. And, you saw people carrying them out individually, putting them in the flatbed of a truck, driving them to the hospital. And that's because there are just so many casualties that it overwhelmed the ability of the local emergency services to handle it.
And in addition to that, EMS aren't allowed into a crime scene until the threat's been contained. Is that correct?
Exactly, although now some SWAT teams do have some medical personnel that go along with them. So I have seen that. They are beginning to train teams that will have not just a tactical component, but also a medical component as well. And so I congratulate them on trying to put that together. Of course, in that circumstance, the medic is at some risk because the event may not be over as of yet, but the truth of the matter is that we're going to have to change our tactics somewhat, I think, if we're going to get a handle on the shootings that are going to be occurring in the future. And
then you talked about the blood stopper kit that you offer at Doom and Bloom, but you've also got something that's a little bit more comprehensive than that basic kit, and it's specifically designed for gunshot wounds. Is that right?
We have a lot of different kits, and we have a gunshot wound kit, a specific kit that's awesome for gun ranges, for example. There's a mishap kit, something that if you were a hunter, it'd be very useful for you to have. If you're a hiker, biker, any situation in which the ambulance is just not going to be at hand if there is a major injury. It's called the gunshot kit, and Nurse Amy and I have designed it so that it can handle even an open chest wound and give you the best chance of having that person survive and get to help.
And talk to us a little bit about skills. Obviously, we need the stuff, but how important is it to get the skills to accompany the stuff?
Well, I think it's super important. You know that a lot of these first aid classes and first responder classes are available at your local, from your local municipality, many of them at little cost, and sometimes at no cost, depending if they need volunteers or not. And if you don't take advantage of these, then I think you're doing your family a disservice. These are important skills to learn. If you've got kids, I'm not sure how. I know that Boy Scouts, I've got boys, so I know that Boy Scouts gives you a lot of practice dealing with first aid issues. I'm hoping that Girl Scouts do too, but there are a lot of, if there's a youth group, offer them classes if you have medical skills yourself, to teach them to do simple things like stopping the bleed, to dealing with orthopedic injuries in terms of sprains and strains. There are all sorts of things that we're going to come up against in the future, and the more people that we have instilled with the culture of medical readiness, as I mentioned before, the more likely we're going to save some lives.
And you guys have produced some educational DVDs that help develop skills. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. We have DVDs that talk about how to be an effective medic for a group or a family in an off-grid setting. We have, of course, individual DVDs that talk about wound closure and wound care, and our wound closure DVDs don't just tell you about how to flick your wrist and put a stitch in. It basically tells you about all the different ways you can close a wound and when you should close the wound, because most of the time in a survival setting, those wounds are going to be dirty, shouldn't be closed. And we talk about how to care for a wound that's left open until it heals in from below. That process is called granulation, and probably the safest way for a lot of healing to take place in a circumstance where you're not going to be able to have a truly clean environment. So that's something that's important. Amy has a great DVD. It's called The Guide to Medical Supplies. It tells you about all the medical supplies we think you should have, how to use them, and I think she even talks about, the amounts that you should have too. So these are some of our DVDs. We also have one on pandemic preparedness, which was put together before the Zika virus epidemic, but it talks about it's very useful in terms of putting together a survival sick room, a room that would allow you to put the sick people in and give them the best chance of recovery while keeping the healthy people healthy. So we talk about a lot of these things in the Zika virus handbook you'll find, and also in our new 3rd edition of the survival medicine handbook, 700 pages, really big book now. We talk about the various pandemics that have occurred and pandemics that could occur in the future and how you should function to keep your people alive in those circumstances.
And Dr. Bones, you're going to be the keynote speaker at the Cincy Preparedness Expo, which is in Cincinnati, Ohio, right outside at the, I think it's the Sharonville Convention Center, and that's going to be October 15th and 16th. Is that right?
Yes, we're very excited about going there. I have a son that lives in the city, and we haven't been to Cincinnati. We've been all over the country, but we haven't been to Cincinnati as of yet, and we're very excited to be at the Gateway Expo that's going to be there. And I think that we're going to have free lectures. We're going to have lectures. We're going to have hands-on classes. We're going to bring up some pig's feet and have people learn how to actually sew a wound closed. And we also tell people about what to do with keeping wounds open too, when it's important to do that. And so we're going to be having a lot of great classes there. We're going to have our entire line of medical supplies there. You check them out and fill those holes in your medical supplies. If not with our stuff, I don't really care about who you buy it from, but just have those supplies.
Well, expos are always so busy, but I'm really hoping that I get a chance to sit on one of your classes while we're there, and at least get to say hi again.
That would be awesome, Mark. Of course, we appreciate everything you do for the preparedness community, and thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, absolutely. And then before you go, can you tell us one more time where folks can go to find your articles, your medical supplies, the training DVDs, and your awesome survival board game?
You can go to our website at doomandbloom.net. We're now at 850 posts, videos, and podcasts on medical preparedness for times of trouble. Our YouTube channel is Dr. Bones Nurse Amy, Dr. Bones Nurse Amy. Our podcast is called The Survival Medicine Hour with Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. We have a new current events podcast called American Survival Radio, a little bit of a departure for us, not so much medical, but more current events. And we have, let's see, what else do we have? Wow. You can follow us on Twitter at Prepper Show. We have a Facebook group that is rapidly approaching 5,000 members. As a matter of fact, we're going to be giving away, doing a giveaway on our group as soon as we hit 5,000 members. So it might be something you might want to join. We have, of course, Joe Alton is our personal Facebook page. And you can always contact us by sending us an email at drbonespodcast@aol.com. I'm the last guy to have an AOL email. Shows you how old I am, Mark.
Oh, boy.
It's bad. I'm old.
And you're not old. You were an early adapter to the internet.
Yes, right. I was an early adapter to caves as a resident too. That's how old I am.
Dr. Bones, thanks for making time for us today.
Thanks, Mark. It was a pleasure.
In the post-apocalyptic thriller, The Economic Collapse Chronicles by best-selling author Mark Goodwin, America is on the cusp of financial annihilation. Matt and Karen Baer thought they were prepared for anything, but can they survive a total collapse of the economic system? If they want to live through the crisis, they'll have to think fast and move quickly. In a world where all the rules have changed and savagery is law, those who hesitate pay with their lives. The Kindle edition of the Economic Collapse Chronicles is now available as a box set. Buy your copy at Amazon.com today.